Let's go. Let's go. This is the Dominance Academy, and I'm your host, Mr. Justin, Coach Justin, many other iterations. Yeah, man. Had a nice day today. Shit was sunny and warm as hell in New York. It was not warm as hell, but it was a gorgeous day today. Got out. Today is my errand running day. The joys of being a grown up. Oh, so I was I'm always flabbergasted by the types of males that are on Clubhouse. It's a really really interesting petri dish of male behavior, and because you get guys who want to talk a lot and want to share and complain and get things off their chest and all this stuff, and you hear a lot of the same things over and over. So I don't really participate a lot on Clubhouse, but I do get to see. I like to sit back and observe. I like to sit back and observe what's going on, with guys, and just listen to their talking points, and just gives me greater insight. And I get to hear about the suffering of males, which is always great. I mean, it's not great, but it's great. It's great for my work because it gives me like a pulse of what's happening, what's going on. So I'm listening to these guys complaining about women, and I became acquaintances with a lady on there who was very intelligent. She had some really interesting things to say about inner wounds, and she comes from the space of crystal rubbing, meditation, stuff like that whole world, like the inner healing world, whatever. And that's fine, like whatever. It doesn't matter to me. But she's intelligent. She had a good insight. She has good insight about the human condition. And and the thing is that as a human being, we have our past. Every single person has a past, and none of us has a perfect past. You might look at that person and say, wow, they've got their shit together. They had a nice family or whatever, but something in there wasn't right. And it caused a schism, right? It skewed things for, their growth. And something along the way just was misaligned. And, and so just don't like look at somebody and go, oh wow, they're perfect. Like they've got shit too. Everybody has shit. All right, what's up, Instant Classic? Pleasure to have you here. So, where I was talking to this lady and sharing ideas, sharing thoughts about about pain, and we're listening to these guys. I've been listening to these guys for years, and they sound so weak. And I've got colleagues in the space who like to punch these guys in the chest and call them pussies and things like that. And truth be told, that's needed sometimes too. It's definitely needed, um, because that gets them to look. It gets them to look inside and go, shit, like why am I acting like a pussy? Like why am I so emotive? Why am I so ready for combat? Okay, because think about it. Like I've mentioned about my martial arts history. Like I started studying martial arts when I was 12 years old, and I went through karate, ninjutsu, kung fu, muay thai, mixed martial arts, jujitsu, and a whole host of other ones. And I've been around some really serious ass kicking motherfuckers, like people who can kill you in more ways than you can count in less time than you can imagine. And they're always the most calm, the most put together. Nothing perturbs them. Uh, Very light spirited. Just like enjoying life. Like when you walk into a room and you know that you can pretty much destroy everyone in there, of course you're going to be calm. because that's what an ass kicking motherfucker does. Like, I mean, think about like a boss, say like a boss of a gang or a mafia boss. Like he can have the confidence to be very relaxed because he knows he can destroy everyone. And so it's like these guys who are so ready to fight. They're so ready for combat. They're so ready to just get it on and take their shirts off and get down. I've been around guys who can destroy people like drunk with their least dominant hand on a rainy day without even thinking about it and not breaking a sweat. And they're super duper calm, even in the face of danger. Okay, so like, let me tell you this story. So I mentioned, uh, Danny. He was a my kung fu instructor, and his vice was alcohol. He liked to drink. He wasn't an alcoholic, but he just enjoyed life. Like he was a very jovial, happy guy, and he loved funk. So a lot of times in the temple while we were, which was great. And he was half black, half Chinese. Very, very interesting looking individual. He had these, he had like almost like copper colored skin, and his face looked like a lion, and he had amber colored eyes. Just wild look. And he did that whole Q thing, like like the old kung fu movies where they shave the front of their head and then from the halfway back it's long hair. That's what he had. And of course, I mean, his pinky was the size of my thumb, and like the rest of his fingers were fucking massive. Short guy, just stocky, ripped like a motherfucker. Um, and he studied at the Shaolin Temple in China. He studied the Eagle Claw method, so he had extremely strong hands. I remember we would train at the park, and we would go running there and training like amongst the trees and stuff like that. And he was showing us eagle training, like claw methods. You do like claw strikes like this, and we were going against a tree, and we were like striking on the tree over and over and over. Not too hard because you don't want to injure your hands when you're doing conditioning. um, you just want to do it hard enough to make the cells in your skin to produce more nutrients, make the bones in your fingers produce more calcium. It makes it harder, denser, and you build calluses and that sort of thing. Over time, you gain extremely powerful fingers. And I look over at him, and he's straight up ripping the bark off of a tree. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, imagine what he could do to a man's throat. Like he could probably just rip it right off of their fucking skeleton. But anyways, good thing like he's just a happy guy. So my story. So there was actually a James Brown cover band at this bar, and I was the only person who was living at the temple who was of legal drinking age. So he's like, "All right, come on, Justin, we're gonna go listen to this band and we're gonna have some drinks." I'm like, "All right, cool." So we go to this bar, and people know who he is. Like it was a small city. People know who he is. They know what he's about. Like, he's done like some very heroic things around town. So he's kind of known as like this local superhero. And but people still like always want to test him because they're like, "Oh, you think you're fucking badass? I'll show you," you know. And there's always that joker, that has to prove themselves. And so we're standing there at the bar, loud music, and we're just enjoying our beers, listening to the music. And this guy comes up behind him, and this guy was bigger than him. I mean, most men are bigger than him. And so he's standing behind him, taps him on the shoulder, and Danny turns around and they start talking. And I can't hear their words, but I can tell the guy's agitated. The guy definitely has some sort of like beef with Danny. He's got a bone to pick and has words. I have no idea who the guy was. And I'm watching this interaction and thinking to myself, okay, like I'm going to ready myself. So I started like turning my hips towards the situation and making sure my hands were free just in case I needed to do something. And I look over and I'm watching shit go down, and the guy's getting more and more irritated. He's getting closer and closer. Like, when guys like get up in faces like that, I don't understand why people do that. It's such a weak point to do, like strategically. That's so stupid. Next thing I know, like almost faster than I can see, Danny takes his hand and he flicks it up like this. So his hand was down by his side, and he flicks his hand up this way such that his fingernails, the back of his fingers, hits the guy in the teeth. Okay, fucking like a flash of light, bang, cracks the guy's front teeth, just knocks them out in like a flick of the wrist. Blood starts coming out of his mouth. He's like, "Oh shit!" Danny doesn't even like break his mood at all. Bartender, let me get one of your towels, put some water on it. Got the big bar towel, water on it. He's like, here, suck on that. Puts it in the guy's mouth. They start talking. He puts his arm around the guy, sits him down next to us, orders him a shot of Jack and a beer. And within 20 minutes, they're laughing their asses off and acting as though they've been friends for the past 10 years. I could not believe my fucking eyes. Like, that's mastery. Now, I mean, should he have done that? I don't know. Maybe he knew the guy had a knife. Maybe he knew the guy just needed to be taught a serious fucking lesson. I don't know why he did that, but I trust his judgment. And but it was an amazing thing to observe. And you can't have that kind of mastery if you have not dealt with your injuries. And the injuries are old. They're things that happened a long time ago that you carry through your youth, through your teens, through your young man years, into your old man years if you don't face any of that shit. And ultimately, it makes you weak. It makes you volatile. So if, say, it's really traumatic shit and you haven't dealt with it, it's going to turn into something because you cannot have that sort of shit inside you and then it just like decides to lay to rest. It will move its way through your life. So you find that the people who are the most leaning towards irritation, towards violence, towards irritability, they carry with them something that is ready to be sparked. It's like kindling soaked in gasoline, and it's so easily sparked off. I'm sure you've come across people who are like that in your life, or you might be that kind of person where just like whatever happens and you just fucking explode. And it's because there's really old pain in there, and that pain can shift into fear or anger. And as Yoda tells us, that's the path to the dark side. And so you can't get to light until you deal with that shit, until you deal with this like this old moldy shit that's inside you. And a lot of times, guys don't deal with these things. Sometimes therapy works, sometimes it does not. So I'm not going to say that like, oh, guys need to get therapy. It's very much case by case basis. Sometimes therapy is not the right sort of thing, and they need coaching or they need to do a certain activity, whatever it is, to try to like expel and work through that stuff. But the large portion of the population of guys, they don't do this. They don't deal with that pain and the transmuted fear and anger. And this turns into jealousy. This turns into comparing oneself to other men. It turns into inceldom. It turns into being the angry simp. It turns into violence. It turns into school shootings. It turns into all kinds of fucked up shit. And, and you might not do these drastic things and think, oh, well, I'm not like that. But look at the habits in your life. Look at the habits in your life that are not treating you with respect. Like if you're not treating yourself with respect, there's a reason for that, where you're mistreating yourself. If there's anything in your life where you're mistreating yourself, that's an indication that there's some shit that you haven't dealt with. And to think that doesn't move through your relationships, you're fucking naive. This absolutely translates into how you interact with other people, because what happens is that their stuff and how they are, like say like a woman, their history and their experiences, their traumas will then turn into certain behaviors, words, actions, and so on that will then trigger your shit. And so a lot of relationships amongst average people is shit interacting with shit. They have their triggers interacting with each other's triggers, traumas interacting with each other's traumas. And so you're never actually dealing with true relationship because you're dealing with false realities smashing together. And a lot of times, sometimes there's a little bit of harmony and then there's a lot of disharmony. And the thing is that like guys will then, and this is what I hear a lot on Clubhouse, guys will have the pain that they're speaking through and not even think that they have this pain or these injuries or these fears or this anger. And they will then interact with women. And instead of having that ability to reflect and having that mirror, they will then turn it on women. And you see this everywhere. I mean, not just on Clubhouse, but you look on YouTube, there is fuck tons of videos of guys complaining and criticizing and tearing down women. When really that's just an expression of misguided and misanalyzed and misunderstood and untreated wounds inside. Now, I'm not like trying to be that guy, but like that's really what it is because it's that stuff that has not grown that sticks to you like fucking barnacles on the bottom of a boat and it prevents you from actually growing because I could tell you to do XYZ. Like someone's like, oh man, I'm really, I'm afraid to talk to girls. Okay. That's a really common issue. And I say, all right, so you see a girl over there, say this, say this, say this, do this, do this, do this. They could copy those things verbatim and it may work. It may not work. All right. It's irrelevant because whatever they do and whatever they say, it's fake. It's not real because it's like what do they say, like casting pearls before swine or dressing up a pig. Like you can take a pig and dress it in a $5,000 tuxedo, it's still a fucking pig, right? Or polishing a turd or many phrases like that. The internal you is still suffering. The internal you is still wanting. And that's the problem with these guys. These guys are wanting. They're needing that validation from women because maybe they didn't get validation from mom. Maybe they didn't get validation from dad. So they're constantly searching for that validation to take away the pain so that they can feel better about themselves. And this is the affliction that so many males have, that they're trying to escape from themselves through another person. And the other person, women, they don't even realize that they've been put in this position. So it's kind of fucked up. Like they're being just molded into some sort of medication so that the guy can feel a little bit more complete. And then when she is like getting the ick, as the kids say these days, when she gets the ick and she's like, something about this guy just makes me feel off. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel right. I don't feel free in his presence because he's wanting. Okay. Like I was listening to Lucario earlier today, and he was talking about um being at a party. He's like the king of metaphors. And he's like, imagine being at a party, fancy party where there's like waiters walking around with like with the hors d'oeuvre plate, and would you like an hors d'oeuvre, and so on, passing it around. And imagine there's like a really hungry homeless bum who makes his way into this party. He's going to be wanting to eat off of that versus somebody who's not hungry, who maybe ate a good meal before the party, and they have the hors d'oeuvres and they're there to just taste them. They're like, oh, that looks interesting. Oh, what's that? Oh, that sounds pretty good. Let me try that. And it's this non-issue. Like if the waiter would walk by and they say, oh, do you have any more of those little whatever croquettes or whatever? And they're like, sorry, we're out. The person who's full would be like, all right, whatever. I'll wait for like the next tray to come out, or if it does, I don't care. But for the homeless, hungry person who's starving, they're wanting to clear the entire tray. And then the next time the waiter comes around, the waiter's reluctant to offer to them because they're like, no, you're going to fucking eat all my shit and I won't be able to give it to other people. Right? Like they're taking, consuming. And that's what a lot of guys are like. They want to consume women. And the irony, more irony from the game, the irony is that women enjoy being consumed, but they enjoy being consumed by a man who doesn't need to consume her. Like she wants to be devoured by a man who doesn't need that it isn't hungry. Isn't that the fucking irony? But it's the truth. It's the absolute truth. She does not want to be eaten by a man with an empty stomach. So think on that. If you want women, if you want women, you're not going to get them. And the minute you stop wanting them or needing them, you have all of them. Well, not all of them, but they become more readily accessible. It's so fucking bizarre. But that's the beauty of women because they can they're either trained or maybe it's both nurture and nature, but they have this fantastic ability to read between the lines of so many things. They can read between the lines of like what's happening in the scene of a movie or a conversation between friends or a fight between themselves and someone else or the interpersonal relationships between a man and a woman. They can read between so many different lines. And even on things that are unspoken, like, micro expressions and body language and shit like that, they can read through all this stuff. It's an amazing ability. Um, but, it comes and it's there, I think, for many necessary reasons. But one of them is to sniff out weak men. And the problem is that the stench of weak men is growing and growing and growing. It's reeking so bad, it's making their eyes water. And what happens? So eyes watering is a reaction, right? The reaction is to buck up, is to get tight. Okay. So the energy aspect of it is they get tight, they tighten up and their behavior tightens up, their words tighten up, and they get more firm and planted on the ground. Okay. Because when the environment gets shifty, you dig in. Okay. When the environment is solid, you can relax. It's yin yang. That's the balance of the universe. So when women are surrounded by emotive, argumentative, trigger happy, potentially violent men, either violent verbally or emotionally or physically, that is unsettling. That's fluid. Okay. It's not consistent. It's not congruent. It's not grounded. So the natural reaction is the opposite of that, is to firm up, get tight, get focused, get fucking blinders on, and be completely grounded themselves. And then the guys start whining and saying, well, you're not being submissive. I need a submissive woman who likes to cook, who likes to rub my feet. She's going to cook for the man who's not hungry, who doesn't need her to cook or even want her to cook. She's going to rub the feet of the man who doesn't need her to rub her feet or rub his feet or even want her to rub his feet. He doesn't care. It's weird. Like, doesn't care what she does as long as she's on the program and doing it. And then he can reward her, not because it makes him feel good, but because he can see that she's putting in effort. And the effort doesn't really make him feel any sort of way, not up or down. It's completely objective. It's just purely rational. It's like you're doing the thing, cool. I'm going to do things to make you feel better about doing those things because you seem to be enjoying it. But the guy, the male, who may get lucky enough to have these sort of things because I don't know, maybe he follows the looks, money, status thing and he happens to be good looking, or maybe he's a little bit charming, or he's got a lot of money and he's still hungry. He's going to really, really value that stuff because that hunger is connected to his injuries, that he's looking for self-worth from the behaviors of women. So he can look at himself and talk to his friends or whatever and say, I'm a worthy man. I'm a great guy. Look at what happens to me. Look what I have. And it's all a bunch of shit. It's all a bunch of shit. Like it doesn't matter. Instant classic. I see you put a comment here. Sorry for ignoring that. You said, I've found that these pains can be deeply entrenched in one's psyche since childhood. Yes. What have you found to be the most effective way of building the internal man to overcome these pains? Is to let go. Um, they say you have to forgive. If there, like, it becomes a hairy situation if a young man has had abuse in his childhood. That is when I think therapy is necessary. If there has been psychological, emotional, or physical abuse upon the child, I think that's when therapy is necessary. If you haven't had, a certain level of interaction that one would consider abuse, um, then I would say that you have to forgive and understand as an adult that parents are just people. That if the injuries come from parents, that they're just people that are just as flawed. And so just understand that, like, they are they're just doing their best, and it's not their fault. It's a domino effect. And through that forgiveness, and then learning that it doesn't mean anything, like it doesn't. So, like, what happens is, like, a guy will have some sort of thing that makes him think about himself in a certain way, and then he'll come to conclusions, and he'll say, well, this means that I'm less of a man, or it means that I'm no good, or it means, like, it just leads to a lot of, like, poor self-perception, and they'll come to certain understandings of themselves and think that it's a truth. And so a lot of the work that I do when I come across these sort of things is helping guys look at their beliefs and say, is this real? Is this belief true? Does it hold water? Because if you have a belief, see, this is the thing about beliefs, they're not factual, but we treat them as though they are, because they're so strong, because beliefs are usually tied with their emotions. That's why they say that old saying with bars, like they say, if you go to a bar, don't talk about politics or religion, because politics and religion are closely tied with beliefs, and beliefs are tied with our emotions. And so if you're drinking and get into arguments about politics and religion, then emotions start firing up, and then you start, getting into bar brawls and that sort of shit. But here's the thing about beliefs. If they were based in fact, they wouldn't be beliefs. They would be facts. So if you say, like, you know, God is a parakeet, and that's your belief, then, and somehow that's tied to your emotions. If you had factual data that giving you the real information that God indeed exists and God indeed is a parakeet, then you don't need to have a belief, because now it is fact. So a lot of beliefs are that way about the self. You won't really have facts around these feelings and beliefs. And the mind will then look for justifiable reasons and go, well, I'm not worth anything because, look, none of the women pay attention to me. And if I mattered, if I was worth something, they would pay attention to me. So on top of it, the mind works against you and looks for elements to justify the belief. And that's what other beliefs do too, right? They'll, like, someone who's, like, got the strong belief about God, and you go, okay, well, show me God. And then they'll come up with justified things in the environment to support their belief, because there's no fact behind it. And the mind, when it comes to beliefs about the self, will do the same thing. So, to answer the question, I would say, first, learn how to forgive whatever it is that you think caused the situation. Forgive yourself for being such an idiot for holding on to it for so long when you don't need to. And third is take a look at the beliefs about, how you see yourself. And oftentimes you can hear it with the internal dialogue. Pay attention to the internal dialogue and see what repeats that's negative. So that's one indication. Some beliefs you have that you won't hear an internal dialogue, but it requires some sort of reflection. And look at the things you say. Pay attention to the words that come out of your mouth. If you do any journaling, look at the words that you write about yourself, your reflections and your ideas, and see if they're negative, and see if these things are beliefs, and if they are absolutely true. If they're not absolutely true, you need to consider throwing them away. And then if you can't throw them away, that's a further line down, because it's like, why can't you get rid of a belief that doesn't serve you? Like if you think you're a piece of shit, and then you justify all these weird reasons why you think you're a piece of shit, then you can't let go of it. You realize that this is false, but you can't let go. That leads to more questioning of why can't you let go? And you just keep going at this. You keep peeling away at the onion. And this is what leads you to that naked state where and this, like, trust me, I'm saying, like, this doesn't have to happen for everyone, but you know who you are. Like, if you're watching this, you know who you are. And, because not everyone has negative self speak. Some guys just need to have some responsibility and just grow the fuck up. But, it's the bashing of oneself. It's hammering yourself with things. Like a lot of guys, a lot of males, they will treat themselves more poorly than they would treat a friend. Like they would never treat a friend the way they treat themselves, or they would never talk to a friend the way they talk to themselves. And it's like, wait a second, if you are not your own best friend, then what the fuck are you doing? How is it that you're treating yourself so poorly? How is it that you're able to talk to yourself in such a way? And if your best friend were to hear it, they might think, why the fuck are you saying this? Why are you treating yourself this way? Unless you're surrounded by losers and they do the same fucking thing, which is also growing and growing. So the weakness, that's where a lot of the stuff comes from. And the thing is that when you're weak, you start grasping. And I don't know, like, if anyone's ever taken a life-saving course, like for pools or lakes or whatever. And one of the first things that they drill into your head is to understand that a drowning victim will try to kill you. They won't consciously, like, oh, I want to kill this motherfucker. It's not like that. But in their process of trying to survive, they will inadvertently kill you. They will literally grab your body and shove you down in the effort of pushing themselves up. And this is something they would drill into our heads. I think it was like summer of my senior year or something like that of high school. I was a lifeguard at a pool, and this is something that they had us do, over and over. And even like the head instructor who was teaching us, they would get in the pool and pretend to be a victim, and they would literally try not drown us, but they would make it very, very hard. They would pull us down, and that's kind of how these guys are, how you guys are. If you're like this, where they don't realize it, but they're doing the same sort of thing to women. They will pull from them in order to survive, in order to have a certain aspect of them survive. And when women go through this enough times, that's when they're like, I'm celibate. I'm swearing off men. I'm done with dating. Like, we've all heard it. We've all heard variations of very similar statements of disdain, fear, or just turning away. And it's not from them being bitches. It's not from them having too high of standards, because that's where those words come from, where they're like, oh, I want a guy to be like this, be like that, be like that, because they're trying to shoot for something that they're not experiencing. They're like, well, all of these experiences that I've had is terrible. It's making me feel like shit and causing further injuries to the ones that they already have. So I'm going to shoot for this idea of like, oh, this guy in my mind is just going to make me feel awesome. And whatever that is, it comes out as him being 6 feet tall plus, or having a huge dick, or having a monster wallet, or driving a nice car, living in a nice home. Like, the details are irrelevant, because what she's saying is there's this archetype of man in her mind that produces a feeling. It produces a certain feeling for her that is a whole mixture of things. It's It's excitement, it's variety, it's safety, it's danger, it's comfort, it's discomfort, it's it's laughs, it's uh tons of stuff. Like just all the feelings that they want to feel come from this archetype that's in her mind. And it comes out verbally when she tries to piece it together in some sort of describable state is this dude. And guys, listen to this. Hungry males, okay, hurt, you know, unadjusted, misaligned, hungry males, like hungry from their psyche, hungry from their spirit, however you want to look at it. And they hear this and they're already in a state of bashing themselves. They're already in a state of self-rejection. And so they hear this all coming from already a state of rejection and saying, that's not me, because they're already conditioned to compare themselves to other men. Like that's a regular habit of theirs. Like how we brush our teeth in the morning, part of their regular habits is comparing themselves to other men, coming from a place of, I'm a piece of shit. I don't like myself. I'm not good enough. I'm this, I'm that, I'm not. Okay. And like what Steve references, like the circle of I can't, I won't. And this is darkness. This is pain. This is mold. That's where these words are coming from. That's where these beliefs and perceptions come from. And I always say, what you believe is what you perceive. So these guys have beliefs about themselves, and then they perceive this of themselves when they look in the mirror or they look at their life, and then that dictates your behavior. So your belief, what you believe is what you perceive, and what you perceive dictates your behavior. So, and your interactions, interactions is part of behavior. So, of course, they're interacting with women on a very fucked up level. Like fundamentally, it's fucked up. And then they sit there and go, why aren't women treating me the way I want to be treated? Because they're hungry to be treated well, because they don't do it. They never have for themselves. So they're looking for the supplement of someone else to do it for them, which is more weakness, more laziness, wanting handouts. They're looking for emotional handouts. One of the most attractive traits that you can have as a man is to never, ever be looking for an emotional handout. You don't need it. Why? Not because you're so fucking tough. It's because you are full with yourself. Because all of that need, all of that need to feel appreciated comes from you. That's something to then further on when I was talking about the steps to getting, the self-forgiveness and growing through that. The fourth step is really filling yourself with your own appreciation, which begins with acceptance. So it begins with acceptance, and then it comes into appreciation, because then you start recognizing details. You're no longer criticizing them. You can then actually just look at them. Okay. So there's a lot of layers to this. Dudes watching this are like, what the fuck is he talking about? I just want to fucking bang chicks. I want to just bang chicks. What are you talking about? When you're grounded, if you so choose, when you're grounded, you can have a lot of fucking pussy. That's the truth of the matter. But if you do this work in order to get pussy, you'll never arrive. A more irony. Like it's it's fucking wild. Excuse me for a second. Just give me a second. I'll be right back. Take this intermission to go use the bathroom and grab yourself a beverage. So yeah, instant classic again. You've come up with a really interesting point here. This converse or this comment here. You said, "Forgiving myself has been the most difficult task for me. I cringe at some of the nice guy, spineless, self-degrading things I've done in the past when dealing with women." Yeah, it can absolutely come out in that way. And another way that it can come out is in not only just degrading ways to yourself, but degrading things going towards the woman. And that's when it gets really hairy. Okay. So, but yeah, it can turn into really degrading things towards women. And this you'll see on the side of the coin of the player. Okay. So I've talked about my hypotheses about the nice guy and the player being the two sides of the same coin. And that coin being sort of like this trail back to these pathways from pain, from trauma, from injury, fear, anger, and so on. So there's a simple origin, and then it splits based on a whole host of different um, you know upbringings, environmental factors, parental factors, siblings, schools, whatever. There's all sorts of stuff. And this has been you know, this has been a, normal thing. But what happens is that depending on these like various little factors, it will split into one way or the other. And so some guys will become these like ultra nice guys where they're trying to, their insecurities and their fears and their pain translates into not wanting to be rejected because somewhere along the lines their their pain and so on, they wanted to make sure that everybody liked them. They wanted to make sure that they wanted to be very socially acceptable and make sure that they were essentially perfect in a way. And and so they would do their best to become really great in the eyes of whoever was paying attention. Now, the other side of that is the player, where the player or the fuck boy, maybe we'll call it that. So the fuck boy who his pain and his fears turns into I don't give a fuck. And from the outside, people look at that and it gets glorified. Like, oh wow, look, he's so cool, he's so detached, because coolness always, look at through different generations, like coolness always has had a factor of being detached, being like, oh, I'm too cool to be bothered by, any of this stuff. You see it with like certain anime characters. Like there's always that guy who's like bored by everything. He's just too cool for anything. So, but his pain and his fear is that he doesn't want to have any sort of connection. His fear prevents him from having any sort of connection. So the pain and fear on one side makes the guy ultra hungry, and he seeks connection and integration a lot, like to an unhealthy level. The other side of the coin is the direct opposite of that, where it's the equal amount, but in the other direction, where he does not want connection. And so much so that he goes out of his way to not connect with women. And he'll fuck them and then just disappear. He'll block them on everything, not because they've misbehaved in any sort of way, but because he doesn't want anything to do with them anymore. He got what he wanted. He fucked her a couple times and then gone. And she's like, what the hell just happened here? Right? Because his level has, probably has something to do with disdain. And a lot of this comes from wounds that are connected to the parents, that's connected to not being able to cut that umbilical cord. And even these guys, where you look at them, you're like, man, look at, he's so macho, right? Remember what I was talking about, the masters. The masters were calm as fuck. They were not, there was no bravado. There was lightheartedness. There, like I said, when you're that dude and you know that you can destroy everybody in the room in a matter of seconds, you have supreme calm because you have nothing to prove. Now, you look at the, classic bad boy, fuck boy, whatever you want to call him. He does. He has that bravado. He has that desire to show how much he doesn't care. And it's like, who you trying to tell? You trying to tell us, or you trying to tell yourself? Who is it? Probably both. He's probably trying to convince himself that he doesn't care. But we all know it's just the yin yang principle. The more you push, the more there's a pull. So the more he pushes shows the more he's actually trying to pull. And the more the other guy pulls, he actually ends up pushing. So it's all fucking yin yang principles. It's all balance of the universe. And so that's my ideas about that shit. Um, but you got to understand that, or I hope that you understand that, it's when they say doing the work, this is doing the work. Um, this is facing yourself. This is spending less time paying attention to the shit out there. And out there, I mean like out in the world, but also out there connected to the media, social media, television, radio, all of that shit, because it acts as a very effective distractor from what you need to be doing. Very effective because it's fun. And fun shit is a great way to not pay attention to the things you need to pay attention to. What I don't want men to do is to become self-help addicts or healing addicts or solving their problem addicts, because now that then turns into yet another distraction. It's like you do the thing or you don't do the thing. And what was that scene? I was actually watching Karate Kid this evening, the first one, and Miyagi was telling him, he's like, listen, you want to learn karate? And like Daniel is like, yes, I want to learn karate. And he's like, oh, that's right. His analogy was like the road. And he's like, you're on the road and there's two lanes with cars going on. And he's like, if you're in one lane, you're okay. You're in the other lane, you're okay. Like the lanes are going this way and the other lane's going this way. If you go in the middle, you'll be squished. And he's like, do you understand, Daniel? And so basically, he was saying either you fucking are studying karate or you're not studying karate. Don't try to study karate. Don't attempt to study karate. Don't be in the middle because you're going to get squished. And so, that's kind of what I'm saying about this sort of stuff. It's like you do it or you don't. And a lot of guys, when they're in the squishing like a grape in the middle of the road, that's when they spend a lot of time amassing knowledge, talking about these things, researching a lot of these things, and getting into it. Spending a lot of time uh, distracting themselves with self help. And there are literally like people who are addicted to this stuff. And they're the ones who are like going to like all of Tony Robbins's conventions and all that shit, or conferences and workshops. Like these guys are like addicts. And you don't want to become one of those guys. Like you do it or you don't fucking do it. Like get on your shit and deal with it or don't. And, it's very much like samurai thinking, you know, like the samurai were very reluctant to draw their blades. Like they weren't just like, they didn't like pull them out whenever they wanted to. They didn't like brandish their swords wherever they wanted to. They kept it in the scabbard. And if it was being drawn, it meant it was for a kill. And they didn't sit around clashing blades like you see in the movies. That does not happen. They don't clash blades. It's one stroke, one kill. That's the mindset. Is that I'm drawing this blade, and from the draw is going to be a stroke. And that stroke is meant to kill you. That's the sort of mentality that you take on when you're dealing with this stuff. And it's a very useful mentality to have when you're dealing with pretty much everything as a man, is to have that sort of that samurai mindset. In my principles, my constitution, there's actually a number of things that I borrowed from the samurai code of ethics and Shintoism. So if you're looking to build your principles, that's an interesting place to research. In fact, you should actually, I'm sorry, not the principles, but the codes. If you want to do research about codes, research the warriors of the past, the great warriors. Look at the samurai, the ninja. Look at the knights from Europe. Any kind of warrior. The warriors from New Zealand. The guys who do the shaka dance, like those New Zealand warriors, the Aborigines. The warriors are great because they keep things simple. The warrior minds, the warrior archetype is very simple. There's an objective, and then you go do the thing. And they have a very clear and simple reason why they're doing the thing. And so when you look into the code of the codes of conduct for these warriors, you will see some very interesting points about what is allowed and what's not allowed of their behavior. And so look into that, and it could give you some good inspiration about setting up your own codes. You can borrow from them, or it might give you inspiration just about how to think in code making mindset. Because it's like the fucked up part is that you can't do these things until you've dealt with your internal shit. I mean, you can sort it out and do the research and, say, this is what I like. But for you to stand on these things, is, it's like building a house on sand. So you can certainly construct the house and make it look gorgeous. Okay. But it's not going to be grounded in the sense that, its foundation isn't poured concrete, it's sand. So eventually that sand is going to shift. Okay. And it's going to cause the house to shift. And eventually that's going to erode things down the line. Like stresses are going to happen on joints that are not supposed to be stressed. And eventually wood starts cracking, things start warping, and so on. And that's kind of what happens when you try to build your constitution without really dealing with the shit that's inside you. The shit is the sand. So now while you can do the research and, build things up, just know that it will be impossible to fully and thoroughly and authentically implement your constitution if you have not dealt with the shit that's inside you. Because a lot of guys, they won't do that. And they'll try to create their constitution as a means of hiding who they are from themselves. So they try to create this persona and say, great, now I'm going to figure out how to be that guy. I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to figure it out. And I'm going to create it for myself. And what I'm trying to do is fool myself into thinking I am who I'm not. And if I do that long enough, maybe it'll come true. That might work. I don't know. But in my estimation, that's a poor strategy. In my estimation, that is like building a house on a bed of sand. Because the bed of sand, that's factual. I know that it's there. You know that it's there. And the thing is that you're going out on a limb thinking that you can create this masculine persona and think that it's going to really work and think that it's really going to be the right way. Now, I've not experienced that reality, so I can't justifiably say that it's not going to happen. But the fact is that I know, like the facts that I know is that the shit inside you is not the foundation that you can count on. That's what I know. Because I've never done what I'm suggesting guys do. I'm not suggesting guys do it. I'm saying like, you know what I'm saying? I've never done that before. So I can't say that it's impossible. But from the way I'm thinking about it, it doesn't seem like a wise strategy. So it's fine. Do your research, compile things, get an understanding of like what your ideal vision is for your constitution. If you need help with that, contact me. We can talk about it. But know that you cannot fully, authentically, and deeply implement it if you are still fucked up about your past, if you're still fucked up about your childhood, if you're still fucked up about yourself. And it shows itself in how you interact with other people. It shows its face when you are dealing with women. That's what will happen. And I've mentioned this before, like women are like microcosms, you know? Sorry. But yeah, I appreciate that instant classic. I appreciate you being here. So yeah, this is where male weakness comes from. Nobody wants to fucking talk about this stuff. Guys want to say, uh, you know, oh, you're weak because you don't, you let women walk all over you. And yeah, that might be true because you're afraid to stand up to her, right? You're afraid to say no. But it's like, well, let's trail that back. Let's reverse engineer that. And you start asking questions. Just saying, well, why am I afraid to say no? Why am I afraid to um, tell her I don't want to do that or don't talk to me that way? Why am I afraid to do that? And you start trailing back, start peeling off those layers just all the way back. Why am I afraid to have this confrontation? What am I so afraid of? And it comes if you trail it all the way back, it's going to find itself in a root of self-rejection. And so, but it's like, you guys don't want to hear that. You want to hear, well, this is what you say. This is what you say. And you could do it, but that's like putting a suit, an Armani suit on a pig. You're not really that guy. You're a fucking pig wearing an Armani suit. And you think it's cool. You think you can pass it off. No, you're passable. You're a passable man. And I think that's what a lot of guys would be satisfied with. I think they'd be satisfied with being passable as a man. They want to be passable. Like, yeah, that's good enough. That's a C. You'd be all right with a C as a man. They'd be okay with that. And I also think that if they wanted to have a shortcut to that, they would do it. They would absolutely do it. They would take the shortcut to becoming a C of a man, and they'd be all right with it. But that's not the way. You see, men don't shy away from anything, especially ourselves, because we know that's where the kingdom is. They know that's where the jewels and the diamonds and the gold is. It's in you. That's where peace comes from. That's where stillness comes from. That's where the mountain mind comes from. That's where true strength comes from. That's where having the ability to maintain calm and clear thinking in any situation amongst any company. To walk around like this is to walk around like those masters that I've been around. Those ass-kicking motherfuckers who can destroy anyone in any room that they walk into. It's the same as that. Because their mind, their bodies, everything about them is calm because there's no threats anywhere. But with you guys, your threat is inside. Your threat is coming from you. So imagine the calm when you extinguish the threat of yourself. And that will bring an immense amount of peace. And it's that calm and that stillness which allows the chaos of woman to find solace in you. Solace in you. Excuse me 1 second. All right. Fucking cat again. But yeah, I was saying the stillness in you is what allows woman's chaos to be drawn to you. All right, because even if a woman's really put together, and I laugh lightly, it's not a laughing matter because I'm glad I'm not a woman. Because there's so much that goes on inside a woman's head. It's a mess. Even amongst the most organized women, it's still a mess inside. There's still, and by a mess, I don't mean that it's always chaotic. I'm just saying that there's a lot going on. There's constant mental chatter. And it's different voices. And the different voices come from themselves, various aspects of themselves, where they're a lot of times are at odds with one another. So they have that, a lot of internal battles on multiple levels. Then they've got voices from adopted from the outside. So there is, um, voices from their father, their mother's voice, their preacher's voice, teachers' voices, aunts and uncles, or whatever, all sorts of different people that at some point have become influential, either a positive influence or a negative influence. They're in there too. So there's all these voices on different levels telling them sometimes contradictory things, all the while on the outside, and then they've got their own concerns and shit like that. But meanwhile, on the outside, they're trying to present themselves as collected, not crazy, emotionally stable. Like they're trying to like just hold all these pieces together, and every day trying to like kind of as it shifts around, like hold it into some sort of form. Now, I'm not saying it's like this every single day. Okay. Of course, things ebb and flow, right? That's just the nature of the universe. There's an ebb and a flow, right? We're biological beings. We're not robots. So it's not like that. But so some days are different. But what I'm saying is that there's so much going on. There's a lot of variety. Okay. And when you are able to contrast that with stillness, you become a beacon, like a lighthouse to a ship amongst fog. You become this beacon of light, this beacon of stability, where you are not chaotic. You're not filled with conflicting things, right? Your reality is trustworthy. That's why like men are more simple, because it's easier to organize ourselves, organize our minds, organize our behavior, our beliefs, our actions. And it's so that they can depend on us. It's so that they can lean on us and say, can you just like hold this for me? Can you just hold my freaking chaos for me just for a little while? And the more they trust you, the more they allow that to happen. And then they open up, and then they become more submissive. They become more uh, more susceptible to your influence, and they want to become part of, because now your stillness by contrast looks really tasty, and they want to be around it more. They want to be next to it. They want to feel its warmth because it's so calming. Now, look at the weak males who are filled with pain, uncertainty, chaos of their own, a lot of internal conflict, and they're looking to women to say, "Hey, I want you around me. I really want to get with you," but they don't really want them. They just want to fuck them. That's all they want to do. They don't want them for any other reason. And they're not even thinking about a woman's reality. Now, I'm not saying out here like, you need to be a feminist or anything like that, but it's just an awareness. It's just an awareness of the female side of the human condition. And it's vastly different than our own. But once you know yourself better, that's when you can know much more. My kung fu teacher said, um, once you know yourself, you know the world. And I understand sort of what he was getting at. I mean, I at least I know other people by knowing myself. And so I understand their suffering. I understand where their minds are going and why. And so with understanding yourself, you will understand women as well. And it's like this multi-edged sword, because, on one hand, it gives you, this greater understanding. You're like, damn, like you guys are fucked up. Like there's a lot of it's like there's a lot of knots in there. There's a lot of tangled mess. But at the same time, you can recognize the beauty of it, and you can really appreciate their fullness, because you're no longer like trying to get anything from it. So it's like, like a Bengal tiger is incredibly dangerous. Like, they will tear a man to shreds in a matter of seconds. Extremely dangerous animal. Um, you know, so you don't actually want to get that close. And I'm not saying you don't want to get close to women, but I'm just saying that there is an element to a tiger that is not exactly attractive. Okay. There's a little bit of um like repulsion because it's so dangerous. But at the same time, you're getting a fullness when you fully understand and are able to appreciate what a tiger is. You're not just looking at its beautiful coat and go, wow, it's so pretty. Like, no, this is a thing that will tear you apart and eat you. So, but if you back up and you're not trying to get anything from it, and you can really look at it and appreciate for everything that it is without judgment, that's when you can really gain to understand what it is. And so the same holds true with women. Like, you can see the chaos, you see the pain, you see the disjointedness and the inner conflict and the constant shifting, and but also the beauty that comes from that, which is like really, really active imaginations. Um, they're, that's coupled with a lot of fear, and they get trained with judgment from guys so that you never actually get to see that side of them. But when you do, it's like you get a fuller picture of just, how interesting women are. Um, but it can only come from a place of not being hungry for them. Just like the guy with the, like I was mentioning before, with the platter serving hors d'oeuvres. You can actually just appreciate the hors d'oeuvre because you're not hungry for it. You just want to taste it. So you pop it in your mouth, and let's say you're a foodie or whatever, and you're analyzing the palate. And you're like, oh yeah, I taste this and I taste that. No, I can see how these two flavors combine to create that sort of effect in the very back of my tongue. And you can actually really appreciate what was made and what you're consuming because you're not starving. And that's the place you want to get to. You want to get to a place where you are not starving for women because you have supplied that from yourself, which takes getting to look at yourself, look at all the shit that you have. Do not turn away. Look at it. Look at it in the face. Accept that that was part of your reality. Forgive whoever had it happen, or forgive yourself for allowing it to happen. Whatever it is, look at your beliefs that come from that shit and ask yourself, if is it true? Is it real? Does it serve you to even hold the belief? And then move on from there into appreciation, just like the appreciation of the tiger. You let go of your judgments, your perceptions, and all that stuff. That's what allows you to see the whole picture and appreciate. That's what allows you to step back, let go of your grip of your pain because it gives you some sort of identity or whatever the fuck, and accept that it's just part of you. And that allows you to have the appreciation. Once you let go, now you're no longer acting through it. But while you've got it gripped in you, that's when you take it with you into your interactions. Once you let go, you're no longer grasping at this thing. Then you can you can act without it having influence on your behaviors. And that's really what it comes down to. And it's like from there, then you can start building and building. And that's when it gets fun. That's when it gets interesting. That's when you can start really living, because you're no longer having like stones tied to your ankles. And that's what you guys do. You got stones tied to your ankles, and then going to society or social media or women and say, make me feel better. I want to feel better. I don't like feeling like this. And I'm sitting here going, okay, I can give you a knife. You just have to cut the rope. Just do it. And you'll be able to walk normally. Gosh, where would I be without fucking metaphors? So I'm getting fucking hungry. So I think I'm gonna wrap it here. It's been about an hour. And my girl advised me to not ramble on for, hours and so on. So I'm gonna keep it short and sweet and try to keep this around an hour. I think it's good advice. Um, women can give good advice. So we're going to cut it here and I'm going to eat some shit and, reflect on this sort of stuff. I know this isn't fun game, but it's all game, right? This is not enjoyable. Being a man isn't about enjoyment. That's another thing of fucking weakness. Weakness seeks pleasure. It seeks it out instead of having the discipline to stave it off until a later time. So that's another indication. Okay. If you want to like kind of look at yourself and see where you stand with yourself, look at the things that you do that are centered around pleasure seeking, gluttony, like that level of gluttony. I'm not talking about like actual eating, but pleasure gluttony. Look at those things. All right. So add that into your reflection repertoire, as it were. Okay. So I'm going to cut it here. Thank you for being here for the live. For those of you that stomped through, thank you for those of you who are catching this on the rerun. Again, if you have any questions, email me at thedominanceacademy@gmail.com. You can find me on Instagram at thedominanceacademy_. We can talk about dating. We can talk about psychology. We can talk about BDSM. We can talk about your marriage. We can talk about fucking approaching women, even though that's silly as fuck. But still, no judgment, just come through and we can talk. And also let you know that in the links to my bio, there's my dating course. And I'm currently I'm putting together a whole new system. Everything's going to be updated. Everything's going to be reformatted and much more robust. And it's going to be getting into, getting your head straight, how to create that identity that, is completely your own, and how to form your constitution, how to get your beliefs and your perceptions, your behaviors, everything in alignment so that you will be congruent, and then getting into how to translate that into relationships as a leader, and how to maintain that through teaching methods, how to actually teach your woman how to be as she becomes a representative of you. And, that's where a lot of the fun stuff is too, because then we get into, behavior training, conditioning, also, always consensual, um, and the sex stuff. And it's all really, really enjoyable. So I'm working on that. It's going to take a while, but right now, the first level of the dating course is available for purchase. And I think it's really reasonably priced. So that's it. I'm going to go eat. So y'all have a good rest of your day or your evening or morning, and I'll catch you on the next one.